Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're talking about something pretty wild. A new theory that doesn't just try to explain our thoughts, but actually maps out their very structure. It's a potential blueprint for understanding consciousness, and maybe even for building it.
You know, it was over 100 years ago that the psychologist William James said, consciousness isn't like a slideshow of different pictures. He said it flows, like a river or a stream. And that's something we all just get, right? That feeling of a seamless, unbroken flow of ideas, memories, and everything else that makes up, well, us.
But that right there is the big mystery, isn't it? I mean, how does our brain, which is just a bunch of individual cells firing off at different moments, create something that feels so continuous? How does it stitch all those separate moments together into this smooth, unbroken experience?
Okay, so how do we even begin to tackle that puzzle? Well, the old way of thinking about how our thoughts change is actually kind of clunky, but there's a new theory that totally flips that idea on its head.
Think about it like this. For ages, the model for our attention has been like a bucket. If you want to put a new thought in, you have to completely dump the old one out first. Clean slate. But this new idea, it says our mind is more like a bucket that's being filled and emptied at the same time. The old thoughts don't just disappear. They sort of fade out as new ones flow in. And in that process, they get to mix and blend together.
Now, to really wrap your head around this, the person who came up with this theory uses this amazing analogy. He says, forget thinking like a computer. We need to start thinking like an octopus.
Just picture an octopus moving along the ocean floor, right? It doesn't just lift all its arms up and plop them down somewhere new. No way. It keeps several arms anchored, holding on, while it reaches out with others to find new places to grab. It releases the old footholds gradually as it secures the new ones. The result is this incredibly smooth, continuous motion. And the theory is that our thoughts do the exact same thing. They're always anchored to what just happened while reaching out for what's next.
Okay, let's make this super concrete. Let's say you've got a few things active in your mind: Cameron, shopping, grocery store, and cookies. All those things together might make you remember, oh right, Cameron likes milk with his cookies. So in the very next instant, the idea of cookies gets swapped out for milk. But look what happened. The main context, Cameron, the shopping trip, the store, it all stayed put. The thought moved forward, but the stream itself didn't break. It just flowed.
And this whole process, this octopus-like movement of thought, it has a name. It's called iterative updating. It's this core idea that our conscious mind is always in a state of partial editing, you know? Each moment of thought is just a slight revision of the moment before. It creates this amazing overlapping loop that gives us that feeling of a continuous inner world.
Okay, that's the what. But what about the how? I mean, how does the brain actually do this? How does it pick the next thought in the chain? Well, the theory says our brain basically has its own built-in search engine.
So our working memory isn't just one thing. It's got two main parts. First, there's the focus of attention. That's whatever you're thinking about right this second. It's super fast, based on neurons firing, but it fades in just a few seconds. Then you've got the short-term store running in the background. This is where your recent thoughts hang out, for minutes or even hours, kept alive by little chemical tweaks between your neurons. So how does the search engine work? It's called a multi-associative search. And here's the cool part. Every single concept that's active in your mind, both in your immediate focus and in that short-term background store, they all pool their energy together. This combined wave of energy then washes through your brain and naturally lands on the next thought that's the most likely match for everything that's currently on your mind. Here's a perfect example. Say your brain has these concepts active: red, truck, siren, and fire. What's the one thing they all point to? Their combined energy is going to converge on the most obvious association: firefighters. See? It's not just a simple A leads to B chain. It's a group effort, a search that's guided by the entire context of what you're thinking. And this is where it gets really mind-bending. This whole model, the iterative updates, the multi-search thing, it doesn't just describe a process. It actually allows us to visualize different mental states. It gives a shape to consciousness.
Take, for example, when you're super focused on something. Your thoughts are what you'd call tightly coupled. The update rate is slow. Maybe only a third of your thoughts are swapping out with each cycle. This lets you build up really complex ideas step by step. But what about when you're daydreaming? Your thoughts are loosely coupled. The update rate shoots way up, maybe over 70%, and you just jump from one random association to the next. The model can even handle those moments when your focus gets completely hijacked. You're deep in thought and then, bam, your phone rings. In that instant, your working memory can do a 100% update. The old train of thought is just gone, totally replaced. It shows the system is flexible. It can do the slow, gradual flow, but it can also make a hard jump when it needs to.
And get this, it even explains how we solve really complex problems. It's like mental multitasking. We can take a big problem and sort of park it in that slower, short-term memory store. Then we use our fast, focused attention to work on a smaller piece of it. Once we solve that little piece, we can pull the big problem back into focus and merge the solution in. It's this beautiful, elegant way of weaving different lines of thought together.
Okay, so all of this brings us to some pretty profound places. This isn't just about understanding our own minds anymore. It's about creating artificial intelligence that can actually think.
As powerful as today's AIs are, they don't really have a thought process, not like we do. They're missing that kind of working memory we have, the kind that creates a self-directed, continuous stream of thought. What this model gives us is a literal blueprint for building a machine that does more than just respond to a prompt. It could be a machine that actually thinks on its own, generating its own chain of connected ideas, one after another.
Now just try to imagine an AI built on this blueprint, but without all of our squishy biological limits. Think about its working memory half-life. That's the time it takes for half of its active thoughts to be replaced. For this AI, it could be way, way longer than ours. It could hold a massive number of concepts in its mind all at once and for so much longer. It might be able to see connections and patterns, these long-range cause and effect chains that are totally invisible to us.
And that leaves us with one last, pretty intense question. If this model is right, if consciousness isn't some kind of magic juice in our brains, but just a specific pattern of processing information, what happens when we build a machine that can run that exact same pattern, but does it better, faster, and bigger than we ever could? What then? That's definitely something to think about.